Hi, I'm Bo Hardy. This is another video in our series on communication. We are going to cover anger management in this section. The first topic is anger and how it can be what we call an umbrella emotion. Anger can cause numerous feelings. It often works as a defense, safeguarding you from distressing emotions or things that are unpleasant. And these could be things like feeling anxious or weak or inferior or rejected. And anger in these situations can restore you to feelings of power when maybe before you felt powerless, like there was nothing you could do. So I've given you some examples in your handout of feelings that might come up that anger may cover up, or anger may actually be covering up. And you have some examples like hurt, fear, rejection, or loneliness. So think about how things can happen sometimes in your personal life or in the workplace wherein maybe you didn't even realize you were angry or you were feeling another emotion, but then something happened and then it just set you off and you flew off the handle and got really angry very quickly. So maybe what was really in the background was one of these other things. And maybe it was one of the things that I mentioned. Maybe it was hurt, fear, rejection, loneliness. Maybe it was depression or anxiety or other things like that. So there are a lot of things we could probably put in that space under the umbrella that anger might cover. And the thing to remember, especially in the workplace, is that this doesn't just apply to us, it applies to everybody. All the people around us are feeling these same things, and they have a personal life where maybe they came to work this morning and something happened before they came to work, and then you say something to the person and maybe it was completely innocent and they fly off the handle. So just remember that these things apply to everybody else also, not just to us. So see what you can come up with that might be an emotion that you have felt that anger as the umbrella is hiding or masking. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is anger styles. There are 3 styles of anger that you have mentioned in your handout. You have stuffing your anger, escalating anger, and managing your anger. All right? One of those is more desirable than the others. Stuffing your anger is sort of like pushing it down and just ignoring it, pretending it's not there. Just ignoring any issues that it might bring up. Escalating anger is just what it sounds like. When your anger is like an escalator and it's going up to the top, and then what happens at the top of that escalator is kind of up to you. It might just blow up at the top, or it might go on to something else, something worse, or another circumstance, I don't know, but that's escalating anger. And then the third one is managing your anger. This is what we want. Managing your anger is an assertive style of coping with anger in which we take those situations and take responsibility for lessening the impact of our anger on other people. So the question is, do you stuff your anger, or do you allow it to escalate, or do you manage your anger? Which of those 3 do you do? Do you allow it to move you in a positive direction? Because anger can do that if you let it, and if you have a little information. Now, here are some tips for anger expression. The first one is remind yourself that anger is a normal human emotion. Give yourself permission to feel anger. Everybody gets mad sometimes. It's okay to feel angry. It's not okay to punch somebody in the nose when you're mad, but it is okay to feel angry. The second thing is, before open, honest, and direct expression of anger, consider the following things. What was the event that triggered your anger? And is this good timing for the listener? So if you work in a cafe at lunchtime and you're mad at your boss, the lunchtime rush is probably not a good time to have a sit down with them about something you're mad about. Third is to be aware of the power of your body language. Firm voice, moderate tone, direct eye contact. Maintain adequate personal space between yourself and the person you're talking to. Establish an even eye level with the listener. Also, avoid attacking or blaming. Avoid black and white or all or nothing thinking, the things we talked about before in the thinking trap section. Avoid words like always and never and things like that, because when you're talking in that way, maybe it wasn't always. Maybe that person didn't do that thing every single time. Maybe they did that thing that makes you mad or that you got mad about twice last week, but not always. And maybe it wasn't that they never showed up on time, but they showed up late 3 times last week. So it may not be always or never. Make sure you're using I statements, the assertive way of taking responsibility for your feelings and your emotions. Also, avoid statements or actions that you'll regret later. When you start your new job and you've been there a few weeks and something happens and your boss gets mad and maybe, gets angry and yells or something like that, don't quit your job the first time. We want you to keep that job. We don't want you to quit just after a few weeks because somebody got mad. Okay? Next, this is not the time to drag in old or unresolved issues. Think about the courtroom shows like Judge Judy. Think about how those courtroom judges have to say to the people in their courtroom that, no, we're not talking about that thing you did 5 years ago. We're talking about this thing right here. Not that thing years ago. We're done with that. So try and do the same thing when you're dealing with other people in anger situations. Next, we're going to check for possible compromises, because that's always what we want, is compromise. We want to work things out between you and the other person. We are also going to, after open, honest, and direct discussion, we're going to close the discussion and move on. We're going to drop it for now. And then when it's over, pat yourself on the back for your assertiveness. Congratulate yourself for taking that important step in improving your well-being, because you handled that situation assertively. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the anger scale that you have in your handout. The anger scale looks like a thermometer. It looks like an old mercury thermometer. I know a lot of us don't use those anymore. We use a digital thermometer. But the mercury thermometer, if you have seen one, has the mercury in it that rises as the temperature goes up. Think of your anger that way. All right, so I want you to fill out your anger scale. And at the bottom of your scale, I want you to put the things that make you the least angry. So put in things like something very small. Maybe you dropped something, or you stubbed your toe, or something very small. And then in the middle of your anger scale, you start going up with things that make you more and more angry. And then at the very top, you think of the thing that might make you the most angry or upset you the most. So try and fill that out that way. Now, if you have had issues with anger in the past, if anger is something you really struggle with, you know, not everyone has a serious problem with anger. But if you feel like this has really been a problem for you in the past, you have in your handout something that says a plan for dealing with anger. And I want you to spend a little time with that. It's going to ask you some questions. It says make a plan. Write down one of the situations from your anger scale. Choose one that causes you to feel a little angry. Describe how you would like to react in the future to this situation. So what this part is asking you to do is to think about one of those situations you wrote down and talk about how, not how you reacted in the past, but how you would like to react in the future. Now that you have this other information, how would you like to react to that in the future? And then, after you've done that part, choose a situation at the top of your anger scale, way up here, and describe how you would like to react in the future to a situation like that. And then next, what negative behaviors do you most want to avoid when you're dealing with anger? And what will you do instead? So, as a counselor, I would work with individuals on issues, whatever issues they were having. If you take something away, you have to replace it with something else. And so if you take away something negative, ideally we would want to replace it with something positive. So the question is, what negative behavior do you most want to avoid when you're dealing with anger? So what are you going to replace it with? So if the negative behavior you want to avoid is physical violence, you have to replace it with something else. And maybe that something else is you're going to take a time out and get away from the situation. You're going to walk away and take some deep breaths. You're going to do some deep breathing and work on that yourself. So if you're going to do something, if you're going to take away something negative, we have to try to find the positive thing to put in its place. And then next, what will you do when you experience your early warning signs of anger? How will you handle it from that point? And then last, how will you handle situations when you feel very angry? The next section about anger in your handout is called Check It Out. And there are some fill-in-the-blank questions there for all of the issues we've talked about. So try and use the words provided and complete all of those sentences about anger. I hope these things are helpful for you, and thank you for watching.